Hello and welcome to a special edition of Sports Wrap. I am your host, Frank Walsh. And as you can see, I'm flying solo today because my usual co-host and friend, Michael Wigdor, has graciously allowed me to sit here by myself today because I have a very special guest. And I believe you are going to find him and his story very interesting. He is a professional boxer, started off at a young age, and through the journey of his life became addicted to opiates. And as we all know, it is a terrible scourge that is infecting our cities and towns and our country. And since then, Mike had an amazing journey of addiction to recovery. And he is here today to walk us through that story. And hopefully you can learn from this and you can share this with someone who may have an affliction of this kind. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Mike Morganelli. Mike, how are you, my friend?
Good, good. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for coming on here today.
Thanks for having me.
You and I chatted off camera. We met a week or so ago, and I just found your story very, very moving. Because, as I said during the introduction, opiate addiction, drug addiction is really a scourge. And it affects a lot of people. And it is enlightening to have heard your story. And hopefully you can share some of your stories about how you discovered this disease, or it discovered you, and then how you rebounded from it, and how you can help other people going forward.
Well, yeah, that's just it. I wanted to share my experience, strength, and hope, because addiction's a tough thing to go through. It's a tough thing for families to try and understand.
Yep.
It's a very painful thing, and, I'm basically here to say that you can have victory over it. Yep. And accomplish your dreams, and you can do anything you set your mind to.
Yep. Well, let's kind of walk down that path a little bit. I know you started boxing at a young age, so why don't you kind of tell your story a little bit about how you get into boxing and how you moved on, and I'll just jump in where I need to.
Yeah. My brother and I, we started boxing like real young, maybe 5, 6, and my father got us involved in the sport, and just took us all across the country, fighting amateur boxing, and that's what we did when we were younger, and it just kind of became normal to us, and I've had probably 100 amateur fights or so.
And you have some accomplishments and some medals along the way as well.
Yeah, I won a couple of national titles, invitational national titles, and my brother had won 4, and we just motivated each other, and we worked hard at the sport, and we were just kids growing up in the sport, just your average kids.
Mm-hmm. And then along the way, your life kind of took a little bit of a detour.
Yeah, growing up, you go through the things that normal kids kind of go through,
yep.
And as we started to, get a little bit older, I tended to get, rebellious and things like that, But first, I ended up having my first professional fight at 18. I turned pro, and I got a win. My brother was 7-0 as a pro, and what had happened was, as a kid, I just kind of dabbled here and there, just here and there. And after the age of 18, after I made my pro debut,
When you mean dabble what?
Dabbled with just just small stuff, maybe a little bit of weed, alcohol, pills here and there, stuff like that. But it wasn't anything that was too frequent. You know what I mean? And then I just had my periods, and then I made my pro debut. I fought, and after my pro debut, it went from just a kind of a casual thing here and there to an everyday thing. OxyContin hit the area that I grew up with like really, really hard. And
you are a local guy to Massachusetts.
Yeah. I'm currently residing in Weymouth.
Yep.
I went to Whitman-Hanson High. I went to Holbrook High a little bit.
Yeah.
And like I said, OxyContin just kind of hit. They hit the streets hard, and
Now, did it come to you, or did you go to it?
A little bit of both. I would say, like in my teenage years, as just kind of at that stage of kind of just rebellion and things like that, and looking for comfort, I guess, in all the wrong places. I started to dabble, and like I said, which was a once in a great while type thing, turned into an everyday thing, and morally, I just started to deteriorate, and my whole lifestyle started to change.
And that took you away from boxing? You got out of boxing, you couldn't do it, you couldn't do the training?
Boxing was just the last thing on my mind at that time. That drug kind of just, was so dominant in my life at that time, where boxing, schoolwork, jobs, everything just kind of took a back seat. And like I said, I just was a downhill spiral from there.
And I understand that you had some family issues as well, relative to drugs, and even though your parents were very supportive and probably try to work through this with you, you were surrounded by the disease, if you would, or the affliction.
Yeah, and in my my whole family, a lot of us went through had those struggles, and which was hard because I don't want to say that it's a normal way to grow up, and not to say all the years were bad, just not to say all the years were bad, but it really did take its toll on us, and things started to change, definitely in the household, and not only that, with other relatives as well. So.
Now, we know that, drugs in those situations, they obviously consume you. And obviously the drugs and everything cost money. And, from some experiences that I've had and information that I have, it's, you go after your friends, you go after your family, and, you basically lie, steal, cheat, beg, borrow to do anything to get that high. Did you experience that as well?
I did. I really wish that I could get into this stuff without having to really shed a negative light, but this is just kind of what addiction does to you.
It's what it is.
I became very manipulative, stealing, lying, cheating, living a dishonest lifestyle, selling, doing things that I just shouldn't have been doing. And that stuff, it just weighed a heavy toll on me. It's when you're under the influence, you're completely numb, and it didn't affect me when I was under the influence, but the accumulation of time, accumulation of years, and just the guilt, and, I just was so, it's overwhelming, You just wake up some mornings and you're just overwhelmed with your own guilt. That's some of the feelings I was going through, and thinking about some of the things I did and how that just wasn't me, and like I said, manipulating family members and friends, and I just really became a person who I wasn't, and I felt like I was just kind of being held captive by the drug,
And along the way, I'm sure that there were times where these feelings of guilt and probably helplessness and probably poor self-image and all that. Did you try to reach out at times, and did you try to beat it along the way and have many successes and then failures?
My family, we did grow up going to church and things like that, and that was, some of the really great, strong points, and we had a good foundation, we kind of stopped going, I stopped going, and, and then I experienced what I had to experience and stuff like that. But, so I had plants I had roots of my Christianity that were planted, but it never became real to me until I went through the struggles that I had to go through. And that's when my faith really started to become real to me. But yeah, no, I had points of just helplessness and hopelessness that I went through. And you really have to reach that point. You have to reach that point of just, like I came to a point where in the morning I'd wake up and I was so consumed with guilt. And I said to myself, I'm not doing this. I would throw out drug dealers' phone numbers and put a couple days together of, being clean. And then I'd literally run outside and be ripping trash bags open to get those numbers again.
Right.
And it just basically just kind of shows that you're just at war with yourself. And that struggle with the inner man, I really didn't want to do it. you know. And then when I would get the drugs, I remember there was times I was using intravenously, and I would literally be crying after I did the drug because it wasn't doing its trick for me anymore. Right. It wasn't giving me, you know, relief anymore. You know, it wasn't fun anymore. It was dependency, and the fact that I couldn't do it, that I couldn't stop, really took its toll on me. That I just wasn't calling the shots, and I don't want to say victim because we have choices, but I was at a point in my drug use where I just couldn't say no, and I had to be at that point.
Any suicidal thoughts?
Not really where I wanted to harm myself, but I didn't want to live.
Yeah.
You know, it was like I was just every day waking up, living to get the next one, you know, just to use and get high again. And when I was high, like I said, I was numb, but I was always left with those feelings the next day. And that's a reality that you have to come to. And, you know, it's, to be honest, it's a good place to be. And if I can elaborate a little bit on that, I'd love to. Sure. You know, I wanted to bring up a passage. I believe it's at the end of 2 Corinthians where the Apostle Paul was going through his afflictions. And he said that he besought the Lord 3 times that it would depart from him. And the Lord said something it's very profound. He said, Paul, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. You know, I had to be at that point of brokenness and weakness, you know, to even be willing to seek after God again. I mean, let's just face it. You know, that's something that you know, we don't normally desire. You know, like I said, God was the last stop on the block for me. Right. You know, I wanted to try to fix everything myself, you know, whether it was medication or trying to stay busy or things like that. But I was facing an opponent that was too big for me, that I couldn't beat on my own. And I had to be beaten down to the point of weakness and just being in utter despair before I was willing to really reach out. And that's when I really think that all the magic really started to happen for me. Well,
you know, you shared a story to me when we were talking earlier, and one of the powerful things that you said to me is that, you know, I was sharing a personal experience that I have someone, you know, in my life who's fighting opiate addiction. Yeah. And when I was talking to you and telling you a little bit of that story, you just kind of shook your head and said something to the effect of like, no, he's going to make it. He's not going to make it. And you said something to the effect that if you think that you can beat this yourself, it's going to beat you. And I'd also asked you about that, is that when you get to that point, you know, everyone has to hit that bottom. Right. I think you touched on that a little bit. Yep. And when you hit that bottom, I mean, there has to be a moment. You know, why that moment? Why not an hour earlier? Why not a day earlier? Why not 3 days later? When that moment hits you, do you remember that moment when you either woke up or you had that thought in your head and said, I can't do this anymore?
For some people, you know what I mean, it is you know, a particular moment, you know what I mean? I think for me it was just failure after failure after failure. You know, it's even not just drug related, you know, everybody reaches those moments in life where those, you know, just, you know, you hit your rock bottom. You know, it could be from a failing marriage, it could be from drug addiction, it could be from gambling, it could be from whatever vice it is that kind of holds you captive, you know. But like I said, it's, you know, it's good for us to have those problems that are bigger than us. You know, that was, like I said, to face an opponent that was just too strong for me was the reason that I was willing to look for outside help. And I understood that what I was going through was superhuman, that it was spiritually rooted, and that with human weapons I just couldn't prevail. And that's when I really sought after the Lord's help. And I begged for forgiveness.
So what did you do when that moment hit you, when that cumulative hit you? What did you do?
I hit my knees. I gave up. I surrendered. You know, like I said, sometimes we try to fight certain battles and win, but there are going to be some battles in life that they're too strong for us. You know, and I came to that realization that I can't do this. I'm not strong enough. And I did. I hit my knees in utter despair, and I asked the Lord to come into my life and, you know, to cleanse me, forgive me, and just give me a new life. I just was a broken, hurting soul inside, you know.
And then from there, the road to recovery began how? You went into a clinic, you sought medical help?
Yeah, I checked in, I ended up, getting into a detox. I did a halfway house for some time. I was working the program, and I mean, I was just in such a fragile place too. I was 21, but I was just so scared inside. I was okay when drugs were in my system, but you take that stuff out of me, I was like a scared kid inside. I had no strong identity. I was just afraid, and but trying to uphold a persona too, and not let anybody else know that that's how I felt, but that's how I felt. And I did the program. I did everything I needed to do. I got courts and trouble off my back. I started doing what I needed to do. I did my meetings. I did my commitments. I attended church. And it just, it's been a journey.
Yeah, and you made another very powerful statement to me when we were talking. I'd asked you, how was that struggle between the cravings and the urges and coming off the addiction, and how there was that struggle between the body and the heart and the mind, and you encapsulated it as probably crystal clear. That moved me when you talked about the 3 units or the 4 units of the body. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah.
That was one of the clearest things and the most concise things I had ever heard. Can you try to repeat that?
Well, basically, I just wanted to, with my, Christian background and stuff like that, I wanted to kind of just put a spin on it and understand that man's a 3-part being, and it's a body, soul, and spirit. And how God is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And even though we are 3, we are 1 unit. And so you can't just really focus on the physical. You can't just focus on the body without working the spirit, or without working, the things of your soul that need to be cleaned up and cleansed. So, so it's important that you work on all 3. I think that sometimes people get so hung up on the physical, going to the gym or whatever it is, that they take less focus off the spiritual and things like that. And you need to continue to grow as a 3-fold being. And
how long did it take you to discover that? Or was that something through that epiphany that you went through that just kind of manifested on you? Or, how did you arrive at that triumvirate of, or 4 things? I had the heart, the mind, the body, the heart, the soul, and the spirit. Well, the spirit.
What with the intellectual knowledge, I would say just from, Bible study and getting to know, earlier on in sobriety and stuff like that, I focused on me and getting to know who I was inside and all of my character defects and the things that made me slip and things that made me fall. But once I started to really grow, I wanted to get to know who God was and all his personages and so I would believe that intellectual knowledge of that came from a spiritual growth and intellectual growth, when the drugs and all that stuff was out of my body, so I was able to kind of grow.
Now, as you were going through this, because obviously beforehand, when you hit that bottom, I mean, you had probably lost your family, all the things that were probably enabling you weren't there anymore, and people separated themselves and distanced themselves for you. Along that journey and along that road to recovery, how easy or difficult was it for you to reconnect with the friends that you may have hurt or the family members that may have shunned you? And how easy or difficult was it to bring them back into your life?
I'll explain it to you. The distance was good at first. The distance is good. Sometimes we don't want to really be accountable, but the distance is good. But it actually helped me to grow outside of my box and meet a whole new variety of people and a whole new network of people. And once I was able to do that and work on myself and get to where I needed to be, people could see that change. And once they saw that change, then they wanted to be more of a part of who you are then. Sometimes people don't want to hear language. They want to see the proof. The proof's in the pudding. And as I began to change and things like that, friends and family, obviously you want to be around somebody who, who's got that spark again and who is the person deep down inside. So once I started to work on my network and work on my personal growth, I was able to have the friends and family back in my life, and I wasn't toxic to them at that point. So.
And as you started rebuilding your life, I mean, obviously that meant, you had to start building a career and getting a job and putting all of those broken pieces back together and getting your life back together. And along that journey, and even to today, how do you deal with temptation? Or do you have temptation?
Every man has temptation in any way, shape, or form. I'd be lying if I said I was completely eradicated from that. We'll never be, at least not here on this earth. But, like I said to you, it's the things that keep me going is to see how far that I've come and seeing how much grace God's given me. I'm happily married now. I got a great job, and, seeing the man that I've been able to become because of God's help. And, my wife and some of the great blessings that I have. I mean, I just don't think I could ever go back to something like that. What it is I keep a heart of gratitude by looking at all the things that I have opposed to the things that I don't have.
Right. I was going to say that because I remember, and again, the way you said it was so powerful is that when you have that temptation, that little switch goes off in your head and say, this is where I am. This is where I was, and I don't want to be where I was.
And it's not just an intellectual understanding
of those things,
part. But I pray. I mean, when I'm going through, good times, bad times, I pray, ask for help, ask for strength. Like I said, I mean, life's just a tough journey. Whether drugs is your issue, or whether any kind of gambling or marriage or whatever it is. I mean, to have God involved in your life and to gain strength from Him and to have His blessing and to have His hands upon you where, He can give you joy, He can allow a love to keep burning in your heart for your wife, or He can do those things. And, having Him a part of my life is the only thing that's kept me. I don't do anything special that anybody else hasn't done. I just, I hit my knees, I ask God for help, I continue to do things like this and try and help somebody who's sick and suffering, and that's just a part of my life, So
let's talk about
2016.
Getting back into the ring. You get into the back of the ring, and then along the way you had a couple of heartbreaks along the way. Going back a couple of years ago, last year, and you started to get back into the ring, and you wanted to get back and start to build your fighting career. Talk a little bit about that little. Tough year that you had.
I will. I'll be straight up. 2016 was the toughest year of my life. I had a close friend of mine had died from drugs, and then a few weeks later, I had my nephew died, and it just was like two blows. I mean, you're never the same after something like that. I had slipped into a deep depression. I wanted to cash in my chips. I wanted to give up. It's easy for people to say stay strong and trust God when they're not in a situation like that. And it was definitely a valley, that I had gone through. And probably one of the toughest things I've been through. But I was faced with that decision: are you going to roll over and die, or do you want to get up and fight again? And I got too much to live for. There's going to be struggles, there's going to be debts. Not to say that I'll ever be the same again. A huge piece of me is missing, but I found some ways to vindicate myself and to help contribute to what happened, and to have a small bit of closure. August 22nd, April 22nd, forgive me. I believe is my next fight. Still finalizing things with the promoter, but it's a very special fight for me because I'm dedicating that fight to my nephew and to my friend and to a couple of dear friends of mine that I've lost along the way. These are the trunks that I had gotten made. They have here my nephew's initials, Matt LaCroix, my friend Rich Smith, Chris Kerrigan, Matt Taylor, and Nick Akins. And the fight will be dedicated to them in the cause of addiction. And we're going to kind of just focus on the recovery aspect of it. But it was a very special thing, and is a very special thing that I wanted to do because it's so personal to me. Mm-hmm. And I just basically am here to say that, you know, addiction is a very, very difficult thing to go through for friends, family, personally. It's a horrible thing, and it's very troublesome at times, mm-hmm. and it's very hard to keep hope and to keep the faith in times like this. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody's affected by it. Mm-hmm. It's carnage. It's like a tornado coming through your life and going to take everything from you and rip your heart out. But I want to let people know that there is hope out there. You can have victory over this. I get victory through Jesus Christ. You can have victory over your addiction, and you can accomplish anything that you want in life. You know, for me, being able to come back and fight after 10 years was a huge thing for me.
And you're 29 now?
I'm 29 now. And so, you know, you can have victory over this thing, and, you know, you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. You just got to work hard. And the best advice that I could give is stop trying to do everything on your own. It's okay to be weak. It's okay to understand that you're a human being and you're going to make mistakes. And I would say to do what I did and hit your knees and ask God to help you through your struggles, and to help you in life, because we really need it. I know I do.
Mm-hmm. You probably have some personal shout-outs that you may want to personally thank anyone, or your church, or any particular people who you might want to give a shout-out to specifically, or general?
That's a tough thing, because to mention one person and not mention so many others, you know, I'm going to kind of keep it at that.
Okay,
because
I'll respect that.
You know, there's so many people that have, you know, sown good seeds along the way. That's kind of helped me to grow. You know, influential people, family members, at different times and different periods of my growth and journey. So to kind of narrow that down to one person, it would just be kind of an injustice.
Well said. Now, if people wanted to learn a little bit more about you, you're on Facebook. They can find you on Facebook. They can Google you.
Yeah.
They can follow you.
Yeah, and like I said, you can find me on Facebook, or come out to support me. April 22nd. Come out to support me and to support recovery and to support this, because it's not just a fight. It's a movement to support these things, you know, and to let people out there know that we do recover and that you can have victory. So I'm very, very honored to be here. Very grateful to do this, you know.
Well, Mike, you know, the honor is mine, and this touches me personally. And I thank you for coming in.
Frank, no problem.
And Roxanne Morse, who pushed all the buttons and made us look pretty. And folks, you are looking at a human success story. And if you have the opportunity to meet this gentleman, follow him on Facebook. You will learn something from him. So for Roxanne Morse and Michael Wigdor, Mike Morganelli, I am Frank Walsh. We'll see you down the road.